My name is Armin Kritzinger, and welcome back to our course on the fundamental teachings of Christianity. We want to know what is true. We don't want to live our life based on a lie. We have seen that trusting other people, popular opinion, or culture is not a good idea to find truth. And even though reason, common sense, logic, our experiences and experiments are very useful in finding some true things, there are other true things that are perhaps more difficult to find, or we need another way to find it. Christians believe that divine revelation from God is a way to find truth about important things. But in order for divine revelation to be trustworthy, we need to know whether that divine being actually exists, whether everything that he says is actually true, and we even need to know how to receive what he says and how to understand what he says. These are some of the questions that we want to answer in this course. The Bible says that fulfilled, detailed, predictive prophecies is a way to know that the Bible is a divinely trustworthy, inspired book and that God exists. There are at least 5 points to keep in mind when investigating the prophecies in the Bible. First, there must be multiple prophecies that predict events. The prophecies must not be vague but specific. We need evidence that these prophecies were in fact given before they were fulfilled. We need evidence that the prophecies were actually fulfilled. And lastly, those who gave the prophecies must claim to have received it from God. We have seen that prophecies in Daniel chapter 2, Daniel chapter 7, Isaiah 13, and Ezekiel chapter 29 fulfill these criteria. Let us look at some more fulfilled Bible prophecies that point to the divine inspiration of the Bible and the existence of God. Now, there might be some other questions about the Bible, like the different translations, whether there were changes made in the Bible, or the different books inside of the Bible, etc. And we will still talk about that in another lesson that you don't want to miss. In Revelation chapter 6, we find some interesting prophecies that are known as the 7 seals of Revelation. Seals are like locks on a book, and John, a follower of God, is given a vision where these seals of this book is opened. Each seal is revealing some specific details about events that would take place in our world. For a nice detailed explanation of these prophecies in Revelation chapter 6, I really recommend reading the book Daniel and Revelation by Uriah Smith. In the first 4 seals, we learn about 4 horses and horsemen. The first horse, a white horse, represents the first era of the Christian church, where the gospel was really going out and reached every person in the world. The color white shows that the message was pure. The second horse, a red horse, represents error and worldliness that crept inside the church. The religious power also wanted secular power to enforce their rules. There were some compromises that entered the church. The third horse, a black horse, is the opposite of the white horse. During that time, the church was morally corrupt and there was spiritual darkness. The last horse, a pale horse, has death as its rider. This was during the Dark Ages and the rule of the papacy, when so many people were killed and persecuted. So these 4 horses, these 4 seals, they correctly show 4 different eras in the Christian church. And it is amazing to see how it was fulfilled as recently as the 1700s, especially with the 5th seal. Then with the 6th seal, we find something very interesting. In Revelation chapter 6 verse 12 and 13, the Bible says, "And when he had opened the 6th seal, I looked and behold, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became like blood, and the stars of heaven fell to the earth, even as a fig tree casts her untimely figs when she is shaken by a mighty wind." We first find a mighty earthquake, then we find the sun turning dark, then we find the moon turning to a red color, and then we find something looking like stars falling from the heaven. So it needs to be in this specific order, and it can take place over a span of many years, because we have seen that some of the other seals cover hundreds of years. The 7 seals seem to span over more than 2,000 years. And because it is the 6th seal, it means that the starting time will be somewhere close to the end of the Dark Ages, or after the 5th seal. The great earthquake of November 1, 1755 was known as the Lisbon earthquake. Lisbon is in Portugal. In history we find that this earthquake, even though it was not the greatest, most severe earthquake, impacted Africa, America, and Europe. The loss of life might not seem severe, but remember that at that time, the population of the earth was a lot less than it is now. And when we look at history, we see that some claimed that more than 50% of the people in Lisbon actually died. There was even a tsunami, and the destruction and chaos was just insane. You can read historical accounts about the earthquake in Lisbon, and it was just destruction everywhere. So we had this earthquake in 1755. And then according to the prophecy, the next event would be the sun turning dark. On May 19, 1780, took place what is known as North America's Dark Day or New England's Dark Day. The sun was black, and many people thought that the end of the world had come. The sun was dark, and many people thought that the end of the world had come. The Essex Antiquarian, April 1899, Volume 3, Number 4, page 53 and 54 says, "Candles were used. Fowls retired to their roost and went to sleep. Cattle gathered at the pasture bars and lowed. Frogs peeped. Birds sang their evening songs and bats flew about. But the human knew that night had not come." Another person says that it was the general opinion that the day of judgment had come. Another person says that it was midnight darkness at noontime. Thousands of people who could not account for it from natural causes were terrified, and indeed it caused a universal gloom on the earth. This was a phenomenon, and although many people have tried to give different explanations for it like smoke or fog, nothing has yet explained this deep, dark blackness that fell upon the earth during the daytime. And this darkness carried on until the nighttime. The prophecy didn't really specify whether these events would be caused by something natural or something supernatural. But the fact is how the prophecy laid out the events, the order of those events, which don't happen regularly, and also the time when they would occur. Jesus was actually the one who made the prophecy about the timing of the sun turning dark. In Mark chapter 13, verse 24, Jesus told his disciples, "In those days, after that tribulation, the sun shall be darkened and the moon shall not give her light." It was just before this event of the sun turning dark that the great persecution of the Christian church did in fact come to an end. The earthquake happened just like the prophecy said. The sun darkened happened just like the prophecy said. So what about the moon going red? The night of May 19, 1780 was just as unnatural in North America. That night was extremely dark. Apparently so dark that many got lost on their way home and couldn't see anything except that the moon had a red color. Stone's History of Beverly tells us the moon, which was at its full, had the appearance of blood. The alarm that it caused and the frequent talk about it impressed it deeply on my mind. And what about the event that seemed like there were stars falling from the sky? Charles Young tells us in the Manual of Astronomy, probably the most remarkable of all the meteor showers was that of the Lunids on November 12, 1833. The number was estimated as high as 200,000 an hour for 5 or 6 hours. The sky lit up like it was on fire. It was like sunrise in the middle of the night. The American Journal of Science and Art says, people said they had no difficulty reading the newspaper all night without lighting a candle. Chapter 17 in the book Great Controversy by Alan G. White, and also the book Daniel and Revelation by Uriah Smith, will answer lots of the questions on these prophecies of the sixth seal. They also provide more details and more historical evidence. In the year 1840, another fulfillment of prophecy awakened widespread interest amongst the people. 2 years before, in 1838, Josiah Litch, one of the leading ministers preaching about the second coming of Jesus, published an explanation of Revelation chapter 9, predicting the fall of the Ottoman Empire, the Turks. According to his calculation, this power, the Ottoman Empire, was to be overthrown in AD 1840, sometime in the month of August. This prophecy had a time element, and he did not just only calculate the year or the month, but he even calculated the very day. Before the overthrow of the Ottoman Empire, Josiah Litch wrote in Signs of the Times, "It will end on the 11th of August 1840, when the Ottoman power in Constantinople may be expected to be broken. And this, I believe, will be found to be the case. At the very time specified in the Bible, Turkey, through her ambassadors, accepted the protection of the Allied powers of Europe, and thus placed herself under the control of Christian nations. The event fulfilled the prediction to the very day, August 11, 1840. When this fulfillment of Bible prophecy became known, multitudes were convinced of the inspiration of the Bible. In Revelation chapter 11, we also have a prophecy about the French Revolution that came to fulfillment. How the Bible would be set aside and again shine its light. Now remember, many of these prophecies were not fulfilled thousands of years ago. They were fulfilled 180 to 250 years ago. It is a historical fact that the Bible with these prophecies already existed before 1750 and 1798, before these prophecies were fulfilled. We have the Dead Sea Scrolls. We have thousands of manuscripts of the Bible dating before the fulfillment of these prophecies. It is a fact. We are talking facts. If you are someone that takes data, facts, and history seriously, then this is something that you have to consider. I can't cover all of the data and the facts and the questions in a short video. I can't do your research for you, but I can recommend places where you can start your research. And I can encourage you that this is something that is extremely important, something that you have to look into. There's overwhelming evidence that the Bible is a supernatural book received from a supernatural being. And the reason why this is important is because the Bible is a book that talks about values. It talks about how you should live your life. And it tells us what is best, not just for you, not just for me, but for the whole universe. This is one of the main reasons why I'm a Christian today. Not because of family or culture or to be popular or anything like that, but because it is true. For me to say that there's no evidence that the Bible is a supernatural book by a supernatural being, I would be lying to myself. Truth is truth. A fact is a fact. Just because someone doesn't like God's rules doesn't mean that they can just say that God doesn't exist. Look at the evidence. So if I want to say that God doesn't exist and that the Bible isn't a vine, then I need to find another way to explain that prophecy in Daniel chapter 2 about the kingdoms. That prophecy in Daniel chapter 7 about the little horn and the papal power that is so amazing. That prophecy in Isaiah chapter 13 about Babylon never being inhabited again. That prophecy in Ezekiel chapter 29 about Egypt never ruling over the other nations again. I would have to find another way to explain the 7 seals of Revelation. Those 4 horsemen. The great earthquake. The sun turning black. The moon turning red. And the meteor shower. I would need another way to explain that prophecy in Revelation chapter 9 about the Ottoman Empire to the very day 11 August 1840. I would need another way to explain that prophecy in Revelation chapter 11 about the French Revolution. And we haven't even touched the prophecies of Revelation chapter 12, chapter 13 and Revelation chapter 17. When taking all of these things into account, there isn't any other reasonable conclusion than that the Bible is a divinely inspired book given by a divine being. And we haven't even said much about his character yet. We will look at that in another lesson. We are only talking about existence. A great documentary that was shown on History Channel and that won an award is Kingdoms in Time by Amazing Facts. And I really recommend to watch this if you want more information on Bible prophecy, the details and how we can understand that the Bible is divinely inspired and that God exists. And remember those 2 important books that I also recommend reading on Bible prophecy. The Great Controversy by Ellen G. White and Daniel and Revelation by Uriah Smith. And if you are interested in obtaining these books, you can contact me and I would help you to get them. Lots of people are ignorant about the facts and the history. But we thank God for this opportunity that we have. And we also want to give the same opportunity to other people so that we can all investigate the evidence for ourselves about the divine inspiration of the Bible and the existence of God.